Biological foundations and memory architecture. I. The fundamental hardware, the neuron and connection. To understand memory and structured thinking, we must first understand the bit of the human brain, the neuron, and the method of transmission, the synapse. 1. Structure of the neuron. The brain consists of approximately 86 billion neurons. They are distinct from other cells because they are electrically excitable and specialized for communication. Soma, cell body, the metabolic center containing the nucleus and DNA. It integrates incoming signals. Dendrites, tree-like extensions that receive chemical signals from other neurons. These are the input channels. Spines on dendrites increase surface area for connections. Axon, a long cable-like projection that carries electrical impulses, action potentials, away from the soma toward other neurons. Myelin sheath, a fatty insulation layer formed by glial cells wrapped around the axon. It forces the electrical signal to jump, saltatory conduction, increasing speed from 1 meter per second to 100 meters per second. Axon terminals, presynaptic terminals, the endpoints of the axon where neurotransmitters are stored in vesicles, ready for release. 2. The action potential, the electrical signal, information coding in the brain is binary-like but graded in frequency. A neuron is usually at a resting potential of -70 millivolts. Threshold. If inputs from dendrites raise the voltage to -55 millivolts, an all-or-nothing event triggers. Depolarization. Sodium, $Na+$, channels open, sodium rushes in, and the cell becomes positively charged, +40 millivolts. Repolarization. Potassium, $K+$, channels open, potassium rushes out, restoring negative charge. Refractory period. The neuron cannot fire again immediately. This limits the maximum firing frequency, rate coding. 3. The synapse, where connection happens. The connection is not physical contact. It is a chemical bridge called the synaptic cleft. Vesicle release. When the electrical action potential hits the axon terminal, calcium channels open, causing vesicles to fuse with the membrane and dump neurotransmitters into the gap. Receptor binding. Neurotransmitters float across the gap and bind to receptors on the receiving neuron's dendrite, like a key in a lock. Excitation versus inhibition. Excitatory, e.g. glutamate, tells the next neuron to fire, depolarize. Inhibitory, e.g. GABA, tells the next neuron not to fire, hyperpolarize. The weight of memory. The strength of a memory is physically defined by the quantity of neurotransmitter released and the density of receptors on the receiving side. 2. The mechanism of learning, neuroplasticity, and LTP. How does a fleeting electrical spike become a stable memory? This occurs through long-term potentiation, LTP1. Hebbian learning. Core maxim, neurons that fire together, wire together. Donald Hebb, 1949. Mechanism. If neuron A repeatedly stimulates neuron B, metabolic changes occur in both cells to make the signaling more efficient in the future. Structural plasticity. The brain literally grows. New dendritic spines form, and the surface area of the synapse increases. This is the physical trace of a memory. 2. Long-term potentiation. LTP. The cellular basis of memory. LTP is a persistent strengthening of synapses based on recent patterns of activity. The NMDA receptor. This is the coincidence detector. It only opens if 1. Glutamate is present, signal from neuron A2. The receiving cell is already excited, strong activity. Calcium influx. When NMDA opens, calcium, $Ca, 2+, enters the cell. This triggers protein synthesis. EMPA receptor insertion. The cell moves more EMP receptors to the surface. Next time neuron A fires, neuron B responds much more loudly. This increased sensitivity is the memory. 3. Long-term depression. Limited. Use it or lose it. If a connection is rarely used or inputs are asynchronous, the synapse weakens. Receptors are removed from the surface. This is critical for pruning irrelevant information and refining mental maps. 3. The architecture of memory systems. Memory is not a single filing cabinet. It is a distributed system with distinct temporal stages and storage areas. 1. Sensory memory. The buffer. Duration. Less than 1 second, iconic/visual. 3 to 4 seconds, echoic/auditory. Capacity. Extremely high, captures nearly all sensory input. Function. Holds a snapshot of the world just long enough for the attention mechanism to decide if it's important. Failure mode. Decay. If you don't attend to it immediately, it vanishes instantly. 2. Working memory, the workbench. Often confused with short-term memory, working memory, WM, is active processing, not just storage. Baddeley's model of working memory, central executive, the CEO. It directs attention and allocates resources. Phonological loop, the inner voice. Rehearses verbal info, e.g. repeating a phone number. Visuospatial sketchpad, the inner eye. Manipulates images and maps. Episodic buffer. Links information across domains and time sequences. Capacity limits. Cognitive load theory posits we can hold 4 ± 1 chunks of information at once. High-value concept. Chunking. You cannot increase raw WM capacity, but you can compress data. Remembering FBICIAIRS is hard, 9 units. Remembering FBICIAIRS is easy, 3 chunks. Structured thinking relies entirely on efficient chunking. 3. Long-term memory, the library. Duration, minutes to lifetime. Capacity, theoretically infinite. Architecture divided into explicit, conscious, and implicit, unconscious. A. Explicit, declarative, memory, knowing that. Requires conscious effort to retrieve. Rely heavily on the hippocampus and medial temporal lobe. 1. Episodic memory. What it is, autobiography. Specific events, time, and place. E.g., I ate sushi yesterday. Context, highly context-dependent. Fragility, most susceptible to distortion and forgetting. 2. Semantic memory. What it is. Facts and concepts. Stripped of context, e.g. Tokyo is the capital of Japan. Evolution. Episodic memories often harden into semantic memories. Over time, you forget when you learn $2 plus 2 equals $4. You just know it. B. Implicit, non-declarative. Memory. Knowing how. Retrieval is unconscious/automatic. Relies on the basal ganglia and cerebellum. 1. Procedural memory. Motor skills, e.g., riding a bike, typing. Once encoded, these are incredibly robust and hard to forget. 2. Priming. Exposure to a stimulus influences a response to a later stimulus, e.g., seeing the word yellow makes you recognize banana faster. 3. Conditioning. Associative learning. Pavlovian responses. IV. The memory life cycle. Encoding. Consolidation. Retrieval. Understanding the life cycle of a memory is crucial for optimization. 1. Encoding, the input, the process of transforming sensory input into a construct the brain can store. Automatic processing, space, time, frequency, effortful processing, studying, rehearsing. Levels of processing theory, Craik and Lockhart. Shallow encoding, visual/acoustic, font, sound. Weak retention, deep encoding, semantic, meaning. Strong retention. Elaboration, connecting new info to existing schemas creates more hooks for retrieval. 2. Consolidation, the save button. The process of stabilizing a memory trace after initial acquisition. Synaptic consolidation occurs within minutes/hours, LTP. System consolidation occurs over weeks/years. Hippocampal indexing theory. Initially, the hippocampus acts as an index, binding together the various sensory aspects of a memory stored in different parts of the cortex. Visual in occipital, auditory in temporal. Cortical independence. Over time, especially during REM sleep, the hippocampus teaches the cortex. Eventually, the connections between cortical areas become strong enough that the hippocampus is no longer needed. The memory is moved to the cortex. The role of sleep. Sleep is not passive. During slow-wave sleep, SWS, Neuronal firing sequences from the day are replayed at high speed, physically strengthening the synaptic bonds. Sleep deprivation stops consolidation. 3. Retrieval, the output, accessing stored information. Recall versus recognition. Recall, fill in the blank, is cognitively demanding. Recognition, multiple choice, is easy. Encoding specificity principle. Retrieval is best when the context, environment, mood, state matches the encoding context. Reconsolidation, the danger zone. Critical concept. Every time you retrieve a memory, it becomes labile, changeable. Again, you are not pulling a file from a hard drive. You are reconstructing a story. When you put the memory back, reconsolidation. It is modified by your current state and new information. This is how false memories are formed, but also how therapy works, rewriting traumatic associations. V. Brain anatomy, the seat of functions. To build a mental map of the brain, we look at functional localization. 1. The prefrontal cortex, PFC, the executive. Location, behind the forehead. Function, working memory, decision-making, planning, inhibiting impulses. Role in memory, it holds the scratch pad. It coordinates the retrieval of long-term memories to be used in the current moment. 2. The hippocampus, the librarian. Location, deep in the temporal lobe, seahorse shape. Function, essential for converting short-term memory into long-term memory. Patient HM, famous case study. His hippocampus was removed. He retained his personality and old memories, stored in cortex, but could never form a new explicit memory again. Anterograde amnesia. 3. The amygdala, the alarm. Location, next to the hippocampus. Function, emotional processing, fear, aggression. Role in memory, emotional tagging. The amygdala stimulates the hippocampus to prioritize storing emotional experiences. This is why you remember a car accident vividly, but forget your lunch. Evolution prioritizes survival data. 4. The basal ganglia, the autopilot. Location, deep center of the brain. Function, habit formation and procedural memory. Role, when you first learn to drive, your PFC is exhausted. Once you master it, the basal ganglia takes over. The behavior becomes a chunked habit loop, freeing up the PFC for other thoughts. VI. Neural networks and association, how thoughts connect. The physical brain structure dictates how mental concepts are linked. This is the basis of structured thinking. 1. Associative networks. Concepts are not stored in isolation. They are nodes in a vast network. Spreading activation, when you think of fire, the neuron cluster for fire fires. This sends weak signals to connected nodes. Red, hot, fire truck, smoke. Priming, because hot received a weak signal, it is now closer to its firing threshold. If someone asks, what is the opposite of cold? You answer hot faster than usual. 2. The engram, memory trace. An engram is the specific physical network of neurons that encodes a specific memory. Holographic nature memories are distributed. The memory of grandma is not in one cell. It is a constellation of cells firing in sync. Visual cortex, face. Auditory cortex, voice. Olfactory bulb, perfume. Amygdala, love. 3. Neural oscillations, brain waves. Neurons often fire in synchronized rhythms. Gamma waves, 30 to 100 Hz, associated with high-level cognitive functioning, binding distinct sensory inputs into a coherent object, the binding problem. Theta waves, 4 to 8 Hz, crucial in the hippocampus for navigation and encoding new memories. The timing of a neuron's spike relative to the theta wave phase encodes information, phase precession. 7. Neurotransmitters, the chemistry of thought. The feel of thinking and the efficiency of memory depend on chemical modulation. 1. Glutamate, the primary excitatory neurotransmitter, essential for LTP and learning. Too much causes excitotoxicity, cell death. 2. GABA, the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, creates the noise filter, allowing the brain to focus by quieting unrelated neurons. 3. Acetylcholine, ACH, critical for attention and encoding. High concentrations in the cortex allow for focus. Low concentrations are associated with Alzheimer's. 4. Dopamine, the prediction error signal. Dopamine is not just pleasure, it is motivation and salience. It tells the hippocampus, this outcome was unexpected or better than expected. Save this. It drives the reinforcement learning loop. 5. Norepinephrine, noradrenaline, arousal and alertness. Enhances the signal-to-noise ratio in sensory processing. This concludes Part 1, Biological Foundations and Memory Architecture. The upcoming Part 2 will cover structured thinking, how to use this biology to build schemas and mental models, mental maps, grid cells, place cells, and spatial navigation of abstract ideas. Cognitive load and optimization, how to hack the constraints of working memory. Metacognition, the executive control of thought. High-performance protocols, spaced repetition, active recall, and interleaving. Would you like me to proceed with Part 2? Here is Part 2 of the comprehensive notes. This section moves from the biological hardware, discussed in Part 1, to the software of the mind, how the brain organizes chaos into structured thinking, creates mental maps, and how to optimize these processes using cognitive load theory. Part 2, Structured Thinking, Mental Maps, and Cognitive Optimization. 8. The Architecture of Structured Thinking, Schemas. The brain is not a passive recording device. It is a pattern recognition machine. It abhors randomness. Structured thinking is biologically defined as the creation and refinement of schemas. 1. Definition of a schema. A schema is a cognitive framework or blueprint that helps organize and interpret information. It is a cluster of co-activated neurons that represents a concept. Example, your airport schema includes security lines, boarding passes, expensive food, airplanes. Function, schemas allow for rapid processing. When you walk into an airport, you don't have to analyze every object from scratch. Your brain loads the airport schema and predicts what should happen next. 2. Piaget's adaptation theory, the mechanics of structure. Jean Piaget described how we build these structures. This is the fundamental algorithm of learning. Assimilation, fitting new information into an existing schema. Scenario, a child knows a dog has 4 legs. They see a cow. They say dog. Neural cost, low. The existing network is just slightly widened. Accommodation, altering existing schemas or creating new ones in response to new information. Scenario, the child learns cows say moo and give milk. The dog schema cannot hold this. A new cow schema is built. Neural cost, high. Requires protein synthesis and new synaptic connections, LTP. This is why learning complex new concepts feels physically exhausting, e.g., brain hurt. Equilibration, the drive to balance. The brain seeks a state where internal models match external reality, minimize prediction error. 3. Hierarchical storage. The brain stores information in a semantic hierarchy, not a flat list. Superordinate category, animal, general. Fewer features. Basic level, dog, the level we usually think at. Subordinate level, golden retriever, specific, high detail. The expertise reversal effect. Novices learn best with basic level structures. Experts learn best when challenged with subordinate nuances. Structured thinking requires knowing which level of abstraction is currently required. NIX. The neuroscience of mental maps, navigation of thought. How do we navigate a problem? Remarkably, the brain uses the exact same hardware to navigate abstract ideas as it uses to navigate physical space. 1. The hippocampal GPS system. The 2014 Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded for the discovery of the brain's internal GPS. Place cells hippocampus. These neurons fire only when you are in a specific physical location. Concept. They mark you are here on the map. Grid cells. Entorhinal cortex. These neurons fire in a perfect hexagonal grid pattern as you move through space. Concept. They provide the coordinate system, latitude/longitude for the map. They measure distance and direction. 2. Mapping abstract knowledge, cognitive spaces. Recent research, e.g. Constantinescu et al. 2016, shows that grid cells also fire when navigating conceptual space. The mechanism. If you are analyzing a car based on two variables, engine power and price, your brain maps these on a 2D axis. Vector navigation. To move from a bad idea to a good idea, the brain literally calculates a vector, direction, and distance through this neural concept space, just as if walking across a room. Implication for structured thinking. To think clearly, you must define your axes. A mental model is simply a coordinate system for a specific problem. Example: the Eisenhower matrix defines two axes, urgency and importance. By placing tasks on this grid, you utilize your entorhinal cortex spatial navigation powers to solve executive problems. X. Cognitive load theory, CLT, and bandwidth optimization. The bottleneck of human intelligence is working memory. Structured thinking is essentially an attempt to hack this bottleneck. 1. The architecture of load, Sweller's theory, cognitive load, is the amount of working memory resources used. Intrinsic load, the inherent difficulty of the material. Example: calculus is harder than addition. You cannot change this much. Extraneous load, the way information is presented. Example: a poorly written textbook or a messy diagram increases load without adding value. This is noise. Structured thinking aims to reduce this to zero. Germane load, the effort dedicated to processing, constructing schemas, and storing to long-term memory (LTM). Goal: you want to maximize germane load by minimizing extraneous load. 2. The split attention effect. The brain struggles to integrate disparate sources of information. Bad structure, a diagram on page 1, and the explanatory text on page 2. The eye must jump back and forth. This consumes working memory. Good structure, labels integrated directly into the diagram. 3. Dual coding theory, PAIVIO, working memory has two separate channels: visual, visuospatial sketchpad, and verbal, phonological loop. Parallel processing. These channels work independently. The hack: if you present a concept via text only, you overload the verbal channel. If you present it via text and a relevant diagram, you utilize both channels simultaneously, effectively doubling your processing bandwidth. Note: this is why mental maps visual combined with notes, verbal, is the gold standard for learning. 11. Metacognition, the executive control loop. Intelligence is not just processing speed, it is the ability to monitor your own processing. This is metacognition, thinking about thinking. 1. The neural basis, anterior prefrontal cortex, APFC. While the prefrontal cortex, PFC, handles decision-making, the anterior PFC Brodmann area 10 is involved in introspective evaluation. It asks, am I right? Is this strategy working? 2. The Dunning-Kruger effect, neural explanation, phenomenon, incompetent people overestimate their competence. Mechanism. The skills required to produce a correct answer are the exact same skills required to recognize a correct answer. If you lack the schema for logic, you cannot evaluate your own lack of logic. You are unconsciously incompetent. 3. Metacognitive regulation strategies. To improve structured thinking, one must manually engage the APFC, planning. What is the nature of this problem? Selecting the right schema. Monitoring. Do I understand this paragraph I just read? Checking against the schema. Evaluating, why did I fail this test? Updating the schema/accommodation. 12. High-performance memory protocols. Based on the biological realities of LTP, Part 1, and cognitive load, Part 2, we can derive specific protocols for maximum retention and understanding. 1. Spaced repetition. Combating the forgetting curve. Hermann Ebbinghaus, 1885, discovered that memory decay is exponential. The forgetting curve. We forget 50% of new information within 1 hour and 70% within 24 hours. The spacing effect, re-exposing the brain to information at specific intervals, halts the decay and resets the curve higher. Biological mechanism. LTP requires protein synthesis to structurally reinforce the synapse. Massed practice, cramming, triggers the initial signaling but depletes the neurotransmitters without allowing time for the structural protein synthesis. Spaced practice allows the synaptic cement to dry between layers. Optimal intervals: 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 16 days, 35 days. 2. Active recall, the testing effect. Most people study by passive review, rereading notes. This is low-value recognition, not recall. The protocol: you must test yourself before looking at the answer. The mechanism: retrieving a memory is a reconstructive process. Struggling to retrieve a memory, it's on the tip of my tongue. Fires the retrieval circuits at high intensity. This struggle signals the hippocampus. This information is vital. Successful retrieval triggers a dopamine release, reinforcing the pathway. Reconsolidation: every time you actively recall a memory, it is saved again with a stronger trace than before. 3. Interleaving versus blocking. Blocking: studying one topic exclusively, quadruple A, then BBBBB. Result: high short-term performance, low long-term retention. Interleaving: mixing related topics, ABC, BCA, CAB. Result: lower short-term performance. It feels harder, but drastically higher long-term retention. Why it works? Interleaving forces the brain to constantly reload different schemas. It trains the brain not just how to solve a problem, but which strategy to select. Discrimination learning. 4. Elaborative encoding, the Feynman technique. To store information in LTM, you must hook it onto existing neurons. Protocol: explain the concept in simple language as if teaching a child. Mechanism: simplification requires stripping away extraneous load. Analogy requires mapping the new concept, target domain, onto an existing, well-understood neural map, source domain. If you cannot explain it simply, you have gaps in your schema. 13. Summary: the integrated system. To synthesize everything regarding memory, brain, and structured thinking. 1. Input: sensory data enters the brain. Attention acts as a filter. 2. Processing: data enters working memory. It is limited. 4 chunks. You must optimize this using chunking and dual coding. 3. Structuring: the brain searches for a schema. If none exists, it uses grid cells to map the concept spatially. 4. Encoding: the hippocampus binds the sensory details into an episodic trace. 5. Consolidation: sleep and spaced repetition turn the chemical trace, LTP, into physical structural changes, new synapses. The memory moves to the cortex. 6. Retrieval: active recall pulls the memory out, making it label, and saves it again stronger, reconsolidation. 7. Refinement: metacognition monitors the accuracy of the map, updating the schemas through accommodation. Final actionable next step: to immediately apply this to your learning or work. Adopt the index card method for 1 week. 1. Chunking: break complex topics into single discrete concepts. 2. Externalize the map: write 1 concept per physical index card. 3. Spatial navigation: arrange the cards on a table. Physically move them to see connections, utilizing your grid cells. 4. Active recall: on the back of the card, write a question. Never flip the card until you have forced your brain to answer it. 5. Spacing: create a Leitner box. Correct cards move to a box you check less often. Incorrect cards stay in the daily box.